So you may be wondering, what the hell am I doing? Would you like to know?
I just said, yes, man, right away, anything.
Alright, today folks, we're going to do something a little weird, as usual on my channel. We're going to make some wine out of grapes straight from the grocery store. I'm just using seedless black grapes. We just destem them, wash them. Got about 5 pounds of grapes here. I end up using about 7, but we'll get into that later. I'm actually using a dog food container for my fermenter. It's never had dog food in it, but it fits perfectly into my mini fridge when I need to lager some beer. So if you're a little concerned about why I'm using a dog food container, don't worry, it's just for fermenting. All right, so first things first, you got to mash up your grapes. And you can try in vain to use an implement like I did, or you can figure it out right now and just use your hands, like I'll figure out in a minute. While I'm figuring that out, let's talk about the grapes themselves. When you make wine, you're using a grape that is specifically designed to make wine. It's been bred that way. A Cabernet grape makes Cabernet wine. A Merlot grape makes Merlot wine. Now, those grapes are very different from your normal table grapes that you get in the grocery store, whether they're black, red, or green. All table grapes are not sweet enough, too pulpy, not enough acid in them, and they don't have enough tannin to make really good wine. But I decided to just kind of use this as a researching tool for me so that I could get the experience. If you're going to mash the grapes by hand, go ahead and sanitize your hands all the way up to the elbow. It just makes things a lot more sanitary. I'm just using some Star San and water here. And then get to smashing. As long as your hands are clean and sanitized, it's not that big a deal. You're not going to get stained from the grapes. Usually if you make a grocery store wine, it's kind of flat. It just doesn't have a whole lot of character to it. It can just taste a little bit thin. We're going to employ some different techniques to see if we can counteract those problems. As I mentioned, these grapes don't have enough sugar. They don't have enough moisture. They have a lot of pulp, but they don't have a lot of juice in them. They don't have enough acid, and they don't have enough tannin. Now, tannin is that kind of bitter compound that gives kind of a chalky, sharp aftertaste on the back of your tongue when you drink really good red wine. So once you get the juice squeezed out of your grapes, you need to take a sample of it and get a hydrometer reading so that you know how much sugar is in there. So that can tell you how much alcohol you're going to get at the very end once it's fermented. This wine ended up coming out at 1.080 on the hydrometer, so that gave us a potential alcohol of 10.5%. Now, you'll notice that it's very, very pulpy. There's a lot of grape skin, there's a lot of pulp. So in order to get a little bit more juice, I took 2 more pounds of grapes and squeezed those, but strained the juice. And then I just add that straight into the fermenter to basically top up the volume. I also wanted to get a little bit more flavor in there just to see if I could kind of expand the flavor palette of this wine, because table grapes are kind of one note. They don't have a lot going on. They just taste kind of grapey, which is good if you're eating them. But if you're making wine, you kind of want a little bit more going on. So I took some blackberries and I just pulped them in the blender, and that's about 1 pound of blackberries and a little bit of water, and grind that up in the blender and dump that in. Normally, when you get a red wine, they're usually between 11 and 13% alcohol. I decided I wanted to add a little bit of sugar to this to bump up the ABV. So I added 1 cup of water and 1 cup of sugar dissolved together. And the other thing, since the grapes don't have enough acid in them, you need to add a little bit yourself. There's 3 types of acid that are added to a wine: tartaric acid, citric acid, and malic acid. Now, I don't have tartaric acid, so I'm adding cream of tartar, and it's about half as strong as straight tartaric acid. So you want to add about 2 teaspoons of that, and to get the citric acid, we're just going to add some lemon juice, and I just went with a whole lemon's worth of juice. We can't get malic acid in the grocery store. I imagine right now you might find it very difficult to locate with things being the way they are in the world. And lastly, I'm just going to add some yeast. I had some Montpelier wine yeast from Lavland, so I just tossed that in there. And then we just throw the airlock on and let it do its thing for about 2 weeks. You want it to sit on the grape skins for about 2 weeks. But while it's fermenting and you're getting that color and you're getting the tannins from the grape skins, every day you need to do something that's called punching down the cap. And that's where all the fruit floats up to the top because it's pushed up by the CO2 being released from the yeast. You go in with a spoon, or you just shake your vessel, whatever, a sanitized spoon, and you knock down that fruit and kind of get it mixed in to the wine. That will prevent any mold and bacteria from growing a colony on top of the raft floating on top of your wine. So you've got to punch down the cap at least twice a day. After 2 weeks of sitting on the grape skins and getting all that rich color and the tannins, whatever tannins might happen to be in there, then it's time to strain the wine. Now, with a lot of fermentations, beer especially, you never expose it to oxygen after it ferments. But with red wine especially, that's not the case. You actually want that splashing to happen at this point in the process. I'm just taking a big sanitized container, putting in a sanitized piece of cheesecloth with a wire mesh strainer, and I pour everything through that. And that lets all the juice flow out and keeps all the grape skins inside the cloth. And then we just squeeze it all out and pour that straight into a sanitized fermentation vessel. And I'm just using a big 1 gallon wine jug. And you can take another hydrometer reading now that your main fermentation is over. As you can see on this one, we did really well, and it went down to 1.000 or just below it. So all the sugar was used up by the yeast, so we had a nice successful fermentation. So once that's in your jug, you're just going to let that sit for about a month. And then you're going to siphon it into another vessel in a month, because there is a lot of stuff in suspension that will eventually drop out of this wine. And you need to do that in order to get a nice clear wine. At this point, I wanted to get some oak tannin into the wine too, so I took some French oak chunks that I had from the wood aging kit that I got sent. I charred one of those pieces of wood and dropped that in, as well as 2 toasted but uncharred pieces. Now you want to boil these for about 10 or 20 seconds just to make sure there's no bacteria or mold or yeast on those pieces of wood before you put them into your vessel. Once you boil them for a few seconds to kill anything, just drop them straight in and let them sit for about a month. And that'll give you a nice little subtle oaking. So now it's been another month and it's time to bottle. Just go ahead and bottle it up and let it do its thing for several months. That's the only thing about wine, is that it takes a very long time. It gets better with age, assuming everything worked out during the process. About 6 months to a year later, your wine should be just about ready. Red wine and mead both need to be aged for much longer than you would a cider or a beer, just to get the flavors to really mature and hit their peak. Now that the wine has been sitting in the bottles for 10 months, I started this project in June of 2019, so it's time to taste it. You may be able to tell by the volume in that bottle, I've already had a little bit. It took me a while to really kind of put my thoughts into perspective, so I wanted to do a fresh tasting. As far as the color, the clarity is really clear. The color is pretty light, as you can see. Like, it's not even as dark as like grape juice. It has a lot of the same character that it had when I tasted it a while back, like 3-4 months ago. There's a little bit of an alcohol note and a strong grapiness. Like when you're trying a normal red wine with Cabernet or Merlot or whatever, you don't really get grape as much as you get a lot of like dark fruit and tannin and stuff like that. Those are usually some of the first things that kind of come at you. But there is some tannin. We did get some tannin from the grapes. I'm picking up some tannin and oakiness from the wood chips that we put in here. There's some darker fruit flavors to this, which I'm actually pretty impressed with. As far as the body, it's pretty thin. I want to say it's almost a little watery. I really think that has to do with the grapes just not having enough body to them on their own. It's still tart, like it needs another year or something, but it's not as tart as it was. So it's definitely improved over time. Is this something that you would want to do year after year? I don't think so. But I did learn a crap ton from going through this process. Despite the fact that I don't have an excellent wine, I do have a much clearer understanding of the process, and I feel a lot more confident that when I go harvest some wild fruit, there's wild grapes and there's wild blackberries around this area in the state that I want to make wine from. I feel like if I go do that, that I'm going to end up making something that's good and that I won't break it. I won't mess up the process. It's really, the ingredient was not the best. So if you start with inferior ingredients, you're going to get an inferior product, and that's understandable. It's not the best wine in the world, but I'm sure if I remove all the water from it, it'll make really good hand sanitizer. If you are wondering what I'm sitting next to, this is your update for my beer garden video. Link right up here if you didn't see me plant everything. I'm going to do a real update for the beer garden pretty soon. I'm just waiting on my hops to grow a little bit more so I have something to show there. So we made mediocre wine. Not that big a deal, but it was a fun process, and even though it took a long time, I learned a lot and I really did enjoy it. Like, it doesn't taste fantastic, but I'm kind of proud of it in a weird way. So if you enjoyed this video, if you thought it was interesting, if it helped you out for inspiration for your future winemaking products, do me a favor, hit the like button. Really helps out the channel. If you have any questions or comments, some helpful suggestions, post them down in the comment section down below. Hit the video description down below with the recipe. I put in affiliate links. If you click on those, I might get a penny or a nickel for advertising for that company, but you don't have to pay anything extra. It just helps out the channel, helps me pay for everything. If you want to see what kind of weird stuff I'm going to do next time, or follow along with the beer garden videos, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon right next to it so you can get notified when I post new content. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Talk at you later. Man, there's a bug in my wine. Yeah. That's a perfect use of this wine.